Ian, we're going to go back to the beginning. We're going to start there. As a child, I've seen in some other interviews you described yourself as shy, and seems from the interviews you've spoken in, scared of confrontation, I think it's fair to say, world apart from your later years in life. Just talk to me a little bit about your upbringing, what that was like.
Yeah, I don't know that it's worlds apart from like my former life. I don't think it really ever goes away. Um, I I think you've already seen other podcasts or other interviews. I was born in Willenhall in Coventry. I Yeah, I used to run from everything. I was to say that I was scared of confrontation. I think is like an understatement. I started to get involved, I guess, in fighting back, like most kids do. They either run from it or they try and get involved and figure out how it works. So I started as a kid doing Aikido first of all, which was just a mess around. It wasn't even anything serious. It was all the lads were doing it, so I started doing it with them. There was a boxing section in the place that we trained at. Messed around at a bit of boxing. None of it was to learn to fight. It was just messing around. Um, I I guess I started fighting back through necessity. Really, I wasn't going to let myself just be pushed around and bullied, but I was still scared of confrontation. I think most people are. They just don't admit it. Um, it wasn't until I'd started karate. I saw a karate club advertised. Well, let me backtrack a little bit. Like most kids back in the 70s, you saw Bruce Lee on the movie and on the movie screen. And seeing that kind of fighting, the ignorance of a 14, 15-year-old was, hey, I just saw somebody who can destroy people. I'd love to be able to do that. So, of course, I wanted to get involved in something that was similar. There were no kung fu clubs around at the time. It was just karate had kind of just taken off. So I started in a karate club, and I found myself um, becoming really good at it really quickly. I was made for it, only because I like the athletic part of it. I like the sparring, and it was just very skillful for me. And I trained for a good number of years until I realised that I was still absolutely terrified of confrontation. You know, you equate somebody who is very good in a club, whether it's boxing. It's true with boxing, the same as it is with MMA, the same as it is with karate. You're in a controlled environment and you're fighting, and for some reason you equate that with how a fight happens outside and how you deal with outside. So let's take karate that I was doing as an example. Here I was, technically skillful. I was hitting people, I wasn't getting hit, but my intention was always during sparring was to be technically proficient, be able to be skillful. When I started working the door, which I'm sure we'll get to in a second, when I started working the door, I quickly realized that it didn't matter how good technically I was. I was boxing a little bit, a bit of judo, was doing the karate, but it didn't matter how good technically I became. All I had to be on a nightclub door, especially, I had to be very, very good at being very, very violent for very short periods of time. So my training changed dramatically. I trained to compete, to be an athlete, and then mentally I trained with a totally different intention to be ruthless and to hurt somebody. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah. Um, I want to go back to that a little bit about being scared of confrontation. Was there a reason for that? What was your first encounter with violence, whether it be with yourself involved or seeing something else happen? Was there anything that happened to you that maybe, say, scarred you and sort of set you in that way as such?
Lots of different instances, and I've got a book, as I'm sure you're aware, where I document that. I had a few little scrapes, ran from stuff, but had a few little scrapes as a small kid. I had a local lad. in Coventry. I say local, he's local to the area. He was a named, their family was known for being trouble. He pulled a knife to my throat, asked for like 10 pence, asked for money. And it was that incident that I put in the book, because that was like the catalyst that made me think, I can't keep running from stuff. Am I going to be subject to being scared like this my entire life? And at that point, I started looking at how I could deal with it. And that's when my brain went to a place where if I thought I could learn to fight, then that would help me. But as I've just mentioned, it's nothing to do with fighting. If I can be very good and understand how to be violent, then I can turn that violence off. Turn that violence on when it's required and turn it off. So my objective was never to be able to have a fight with somebody. To have a fight with somebody would be in a competitive capacity, to be able to stand with rules and have a fight with somebody. Totally different things. I've actually thought about it over the years a lot, about what was it I was actually scared of. And as I analysed it, once I got good at violence, the fear changed. I don't think I was ever really cognitively, I didn't really think that I was scared of what happened to me. It was just not being able to handle those emotions, those feelings. Then as a bouncer, when that adrenaline hit, it was because I knew what I was going to do. I knew the mess I was going to make. I knew the damage I was going to do. And just thinking about that kind of damage that I was going to do set the adrenaline even stronger, because you're not just going to hit somebody. Your intention is just brutality, to really damage them. Because if you don't, then you're in a world of trouble.
Is it fair to say when you started the combat sports and the karate especially, that you walked in thinking you're going to learn how to fight, which you did do so, and you learned that violence, but more so you learned discipline?
You learn discipline. A lot of I see a lot of karate clubs. I don't know. I've spoke to some boxing clubs, and I spoke to some judo guys actually. Everything's changed over the last, I don't know how long, maybe last 10, 15 years. There are clubs that are set up now. I'll use karate as an example because that's the only ones I can really speak with confidence about. There are so many martial art clubs and so many karate clubs these days. They cater for young children. They start them at 3 years of age, 5 years of age. And their advertisement is about gaining confidence. Now, isn't that what the Cubs do, the Scouts do, the Brownies do, whatever it is? You can go to a Scout club and they'll teach you how to be disciplined, how to be polite, how to be respectful, how to tie your shoelaces up, how to speak to people. They'll give you confidence. But what I'm finding is that a lot of these karate clubs, that they're giving these kids an unloaded gun. They're giving them a gun with no bullets in it. And even if there are a bullet in it, they're giving them a gun with no trigger. They're not explaining to them how it really works. All they ever talk about is do this kick, do this punch, spar with somebody. And a lot of the clubs don't even spar these days. A lot of the karate clubs don't even spar. They're too worried about losing students. And I have seen that in a lot of boxing clubs too. They teach them the discipline, which is phenomenal. You can't knock that. They'll give them the discipline. They'll put them through hard times. But majority of the instructors, and I get it, I totally get it, they're doing it now because it's a business and they don't want to do anything to lose a student. You start a student on sparring and you lose 50% of them after the first night. So unfortunately, when it comes to combat sports, and that's why I mentioned judo, some of the judo guys I know say the same thing. What they do is the very basic partner work, the very basic technical stuff. They don't push them too hard. They don't test them too hard. Reason being is we're going to lose money. And once combat sports of all aspects, whatever it is, once it became a business, the majority of their students are their bread and butter. So you can kind of understand why they do it if it's a business. Unfortunately, the majority of people out there in combat sports these days, all they're doing is they're having a fun workout. They're enjoying, they keep coming back, they're enjoying it. But the big lie, which I had for many years, was I thought in this competitive environment, I also equated it to self-defense. I would take the word self-defense out of every combat sport. Totally. Just take the word self-defense out of it and make it a totally separate class. This is boxing. Does it work? Of course it does. In actual fact, I say boxing is probably the best that you could ever have for simplicity and reality and effectiveness if it actually happened to you. But even then, a street fight, there are zero rules, and the damage you do to somebody is just, it's just horrendous. And it's that intention, the damage you do to somebody, it's that intention that causes that adrenaline. And it's that damage you do to somebody that could be problematic in the future. So discipline-wise, combat sports are brilliant. But, you know, you're a boxing coach, right?
No, I work in boxing media. I ran a lot of boxing gyms a lot.
Okay. So you if you watch a lot of the boxing, here's a great thing for people to take a look at, which explains things perfectly. That what maybe I'm not explaining it properly, but this explains it perfectly. If you, and you'll know what I'm talking about with this one if you watch a lot of boxing. If you're sitting watching a boxing match, and they're both very technical, skillful fighters. There's one that springs to mind, but I can't remember the two fighters. But they're a very skillful match, great match, and at the end of it, there's a ring invasion. One of the referee does something, one of the competitors do something, and it kicks off in the ring. And some guy runs up, jumps up, and does a flying kick. You might have seen it, and he kind of bounces off the ropes. And then they're all just flying, throwing punches. They're all haymakers. There's no boxing going on. Everybody's just trying to hit each other. There's nothing. There's no boxing involved whatsoever. So you've watched this fantastic boxing match, two skillful guys. But even the boxing coaches and the boxing trainers, even those, when it kicks off, when you're just trying to hurt somebody as fast as possible, all the technical stuff goes out the window, and it's just a brawl. And if you watch a ring invasion, that happens every single time. There's no technique whatsoever. It's just throwing punches and trying to do damage. And anybody could do that.
Absolutely. One key word you mentioned earlier about when you join a karate club or any club you join is confidence. It's to build confidence. And you mentioned yourself, you was a shy child, scared of confrontation. What did karate do for you mentally? Was it walking in a boy, leaving a man type of situation?
No, I became an athlete. That's some people join a karate club because they want to learn an art, and it is very artful. It's very skillful. There's some very talented, very skillful, tough karate guys out there. So I'm not dogging on karate at all. But for me, once I got into the sparring and once I looked at competitive karate, now I say competitive karate because even that's changed. I find it very difficult to watch competitive karate these days. Back in the day, we had no body armor on. The gloves were just little tiny gloves. You could hit somebody to the body, I put them on the floor, and you're okay. You punch. It was all about control. That's what I loved about karate as well, is that you had to be, your skill had to be at the level where you could hit somebody with potentially a very powerful kick to the head, but still have the ability to control it on impact. That was the skill. Your job wasn't to try and knock them out. Randori in a club, you wouldn't hit somebody as hard as you wanted to, but there There was no rules. But clubs have changed these days. I can't watch competitive karate anymore. It's all changed. They wear body armor. They scream and shout just like, it's just ridiculous. So for me, I joined the club and I had this false sense of confidence. I became very confident in the club because I was good in the club. I became very confident on the competition area because I knew what I was doing. I trained to compete. And so, yeah, I became a competitive athlete. But this is my point about separating what you do. When we talk about a combat sport, can it translate into a street fight? If we're even talking about that, or are we just talking about a combative sport only? It's very difficult if you talk to anybody, whether it be a boxer, whether it be an MMA fighter, whether it be a karate person. Every one of them, I'm sure you'll agree, in their head, they think that they can take this ability and use it should they get in trouble in a fight. Everybody I've ever spoke to involved in karate, I mean, how many people have got a black belt and people look at them and think, oh, black belt, don't mess with him. It just goes with the territory. But it isn't true.
Absolutely. You mentioned you became an athlete and you was good at it. Silver medalist at Commonwealth Games. Just talk to me a little bit about your competing days. What were your favourite memories of competing?
Competition for me was, I always wanted to compete internationally. It wasn't until I started competing internationally that I actually realised I'd never had aspirations to be European world champion. It wasn't something I ever aspired to be. I realised that just getting on the vehicle, getting on the bus was all I wanted. Wearing an England badge and competing internationally was pretty much all I wanted. Once I got that accolade, I was kind of happy with that. So I got third places, second places in British championships. I won national championships, got selected for England, competed. The Commonwealth Karate Federation Championships was where I got my Commonwealth silver. The Commonwealth Games doesn't have karate in it, but the people who would be in the Commonwealth Games, if it had been accepted as a sport, were the same people that were at the Commonwealth Karate Federation Championship. So it is a Commonwealth medal. Once I got a silver at that, and it was a close match in the final. Once I got a silver at that, I think I kind of fell out of love with competition. I don't know why. The fire went out. As I said, I started karate initially thinking I could learn to fight. I quickly separated the athlete, the competitor, from a street fight, and I trained in two completely different ways. I got this sport that I loved, trained for years, did well at it, and then I got burnt out with it. I had enough. So I still train now, not in the same way. I'll hit the bag a lot. I meet lads down the gym and we do some boxing sparring, for no other reason than just to stay in shape, really. Just fighting old age these days. We're not even training to fight, and to be honest, I'm not actually a fighter. I'm a competitive athlete, or was, excuse me, a competitive athlete in a combat sport. And I found myself dragged into real violence when I was asked to work the door one night, and I said, yeah, okay. Somebody convinced me that I could have a fight, and then when I worked the door, I realised, fuck me, no, I couldn't. So, and that was the next journey then, to figure out how I could stay on the door and make it work.
Before I go on to the door work, I just want to mention obviously the backdrop behind you there, Kasumi Ninja, Angus McGregor. Uh,
Yeah,
which I'm probably skipping over a little bit for fast forwarding a bit there, but just talking about that and how that came about.
Kasumi Ninja.
Hmm.
Um, I was competing internationally at the time, and had a phone call. Somebody asked me if I wanted to be in a computer game. Um, thought it was a wind up. It was one of the Doorman, or a friend of the Doorman. So I thought it was a wind up. Turns out it wasn't a wind up. I went to Manchester, got in front of a green screen. They stuck a beard on my face, give me a kilt and a waistcoat, and yeah, I played the character Angus McGregor in this game called Kasumi Ninja. And the reason that's came about, or being talked about a lot now, is because of the retro gaming scene is really big. And once people found out that I was the person who played that character, people have got in touch with me to ask me to go to conventions, expos, and just go and meet people who are fans of the game. Um, Once I'd done that game, I ended up doing two more. I was in Batman and Robin and the Fantastic Four, which were motion capture. The Kasumi Ninja, Angus McGregor, was in front of a green screen, so it was really me. It was me dressed like that and doing all the moves. But the Batman and Robin and Fantastic Four, it was all motion capture. So all they did was they captured the movements, and then they put the animation, the skin, if you will, on the bare bones of the movements that we did.
When you done that, obviously the first one there, the Kasumi Ninja, you thought it was a bit of a wind up and you went along and done that. But then when Fantastic Four and Batman and Robin come along, they're obviously two big names franchises. What went through your mind at that point? Obviously, you had to accept and had to do it, but was it something that you thought could this be another sort of career path for you?
I kind of thought it would, but they're talking in the early 90s. And so I certainly didn't have a computer. There were no smartphones then. We weren't doing what we're doing now, getting on your phone and looking at Facebook and researching stuff. So when I was asked to do that, I did think, I wonder if this should go any further. But the Batman and Robin game was made by a company called Probe Entertainment in Guildford. In Croydon. But it was made for a company called Acclaim, and it was out on the PlayStation. And it was probably a year after I did it before I even got a copy of it to look at it. So I did think at the time this could be something, but you couldn't go day to day and research it. And so within a month or two of doing it, you've totally forgot about it. Then when it comes out, you only see it in a magazine talking about it. There's nothing online because there isn't really. We're talking again early 90s. Nobody was getting on computers and looking online, and like we got social media now, we can share stuff. So I didn't think any more of it really. After that, I thought I'd got paid for it, and it wasn't a massive amount of money. Got paid for doing it, and just moved on, and then heard nothing more about it whatsoever. Which, having spoken to a lot of the gamers that I'm now in contact with, they tell me that if the game had been promoted more, let's say Kasumi Ninja, for example, if that had come out on a different system, it came out on a console called the Jaguar. And it's like you now, if you've got, I give you a CD, but there are very few CD players around. You have to go and buy a CD player to play your CD. Chances are you think, well, what's a CD for? I'm not interested. Why am I buying a CD if I haven't got a CD player? And what happened with Kasumi Ninja was there wasn't a lot of people who had this Jaguar console. So they'd first have to buy the Jaguar console before they bought the game. Whereas when Mortal Kombat came out, it came out on a system that millions of people already owned. It also came out on in the arcades. So Mortal Kombat has made millions. Absolutely, it's a massive, massive game purely because people had the console already and they had the game they could put on the console. So what's happening now? People are recognizing that Kasumi Ninja was what do they call it? They call it a rip-off of Mortal Kombat, but it's got this kind of nostalgic feel to it. A lot of people remember it. It sold a lot of copies, but nowhere near, nowhere close to Mortal Kombat. So did I think it was going to go massive? A little part of me thought it could, but then it all kind of died down after a few months because there was no way of researching it really.
In terms you mentioned, obviously now it's sort of getting a bit of resurgence and the retro games scene, and you get a nice go and do these events for the games. Does it give you a good sense of pride to be a part of these games, especially the later two when they are big franchises like your Marvel and your DCs?
It's interesting. It's exciting. I was in last year. I was in Milwaukee. I got a call saying, "Would you want to come and be a guest in Milwaukee?" So I did that. Spent some time with all the Mortal Kombat people. In fact, I talked to them quite often, the Mortal Kombat people. I then got a call. I went to Germany. Kasumi Ninja and Angus McGregor is quite a popular character in Germany. I've done a few conventions, and there's more this year now, 2025. There's more in the pipeline. So how much work will I do with that? I've got no idea. It's exciting to be part of it because the character Angus McGregor. I don't know if you've played the game. You've played Kasumi Ninja. Have you ever seen it?
No.
Okay, so the character, what happened, and the reason the character is so well thought of is when we're doing the shoot, they asked me to do some special moves. You know, like you've got in Mortal Kombat, they shoot flames out their hands and all kinds of crazy stuff. So I suggested that as this Scotsman in this kilt, that you lift the kilt up and a fireball comes out from the kilt. And they said, yeah, great idea. Another one they asked me to do was a fatality move. And I suggested that I spin round, kick my opponent's head off. The head goes off, it comes down, and I headbutt it. Great idea, they said. So they put that into the game. So if you look at all the other characters are all pretty much the same. But this Scottish character is renowned, and they always talk about the character who fires a flame from under his kilt. So that character kind of made me, when they hear that I was Angus McGregor, it's kind of made me famous for that. And the first thing people ask, are you the guy who fired the flame from under his kilt? So it's worth going to YouTube, looking for Kasumi Ninja, looking for Angus McGregor Fireball, and you'll see me doing that.
Fantastic. Let's move on to the doors, working as a bouncer. You mentioned earlier the violence. You don't really get to taste the violence whilst you're competing until you realise it out on the streets, and street fighting's been a completely different game to combat sports. Firstly, what made you work the doors?
First thing that made me work the door was when a guy came to the karate club. I was winning competitions, not blowing my own trumpet. I was pretty much dominating sparring in the club. I was just naturally athletic more than technically a fighter. A guy came to the karate club. He was working as a bouncer, easily 10 years older than me, a lot of experience. He'd got quite a lot of experience as an amateur boxer. And his background was old school taekwondo back in the day, when not the stuff you see on the Olympics. Old school taekwondo is tough. He was a tough guy, and he came to the club just to do some different sparring. And they sent him over to me, and we had a right ding dong. And at the end of it, he said, "You know, you should work the door. You can really handle yourself." And at 19, my heart sank, because I thought, I can't get involved in all that violence shit. I can't do that. But then part of me said, well, this is a bouncer. This is guys fighting all the time. Again, thinking that as a bouncer, you're fighting. It isn't just violence. You're not thinking violence. You're thinking just fighting. So he kind of convinced me that I could have a fight. And so he said, we'll look after you. Just come to the club. We'll look after you. I think you'll be a good addition to the team. So I said, yeah, why not? Let's just give it a go. Started my first night, and my first night was my last night. It was just horrendous. The people that were in there, it kicked off. I saw people glassed, hit with chairs. I tried to stop a guy coming in, and he just told me to fuck off, get your hand off me, and I bottled it. And I just wanted to get out of there. It was just absolutely horrendous. I watched the bouncers beat the shit out of somebody, throw him out the back door. I thought they killed him. I actually thought, oh my God, my first night, this is just, there's nothing in a karate club, there's nothing in an MMA club or a boxing club that can prepare you for that kind of violence. Because it was just violence, no fighting, just violence. So I quit first night. And I sat at home. I'm a black belt. I got trophies all over the place. I'm a great competitor, but I can't get past this being able to have a black belt, being a good fighter, and being scared of confrontation. If only I had the balls to say, I'm not a fighter, I don't need that, I just need my sport, I'd have been probably better off at the time. But I couldn't live with myself. So it didn't take too long. I got back on the door and realized just to separate both of them. It was, I use this analogy a lot, so I'll use it again. People have seen it a lot now, I guess, but it's worth using again, unless you haven't seen it already. How old are you?
34.
34. So for 33 years, you've been taking single steps. You started walking a year prior, yeah? So if you've been walking since you're 1 year of age, for 33 years you've been walking, you're taking single steps, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So you've done millions and millions and millions of steps. You are essentially a one-step expert. Physically, you're a one-step expert. If I asked you to stand up now and take a step, your heart wouldn't start pumping. You wouldn't be scared. You just get up and just do it. You do it every single day. It's easy. But if I then said to you, okay, go and stand on the edge of a high diving board or a cliff where people jump off, the high divers. I mean, I don't know how high, but I mean high divers, cliff divers, and take one step. Unless you're okay with that sort of stuff, you would suddenly find that physical one step that you've done millions of times impossible. Even if you said to people, who's been killed doing this? Nobody. Can I have frogmen down there and boats and first aid? Yeah, of course you can. Taking that one step isn't physical. It's now mental. For some reason, you cannot do it. And the reason I use that analogy is because you can do a million right crosses on a pad, left hooks, front kicks, roundhouse kicks. You can be technically proficient that you've done millions and millions and millions of times over a 30-odd year period. Physically, you can do it. Now some monster stands in front of you and you're outside the chippy as a group of lads and it's going to kick off and this guy's in front of you. That one step, that one punch that you've done millions of times, it's going to take a split second, like taking a step off the diving board, but you can't pull the trigger. It's not physical, it's mental. So once I realized I had to get very good at pulling the trigger, very good at being very, very violent, it all changed. And what I did, I created a separate personality who took that on. Once I realized it's about violence, I would be me for 99.9% of the time. And then when violence came calling, I just handed it over to that personality who did that. And I can't. Did I have a few technical square goes on the street? Yeah, I ended up doing that, which was a mistake. But I would say pretty much every confrontation I ever had on a nightclub door that couldn't be avoided, and most of them can be avoided. Every one that couldn't be avoided, I just hit first, hit hard, and was just ruthless. But to me, that's the only answer. When you've got no choice, zero choice, doesn't matter how good the person is in front of you. I mean, I've seen people who are new are hard men, who can have a fight, but they were drunk, but they were going to hurt me. They were going to hit me with something. They were going to hit me with a chair or whatever. And they're very violent people. A square go with them, I'd have been finished. So you just take them out before they even know they're in a fight. And that to me is the only way it works on the street. That's the only way it works.
I'm going to ask a question in terms of your Doorman colleagues and your um, other karate colleagues, let's call them, people in the gym, people where you trained with every day. Could you tell the difference between the two just by their mannerisms? Could you see there was a violent streak in your Doorman colleagues just by a general conversation compared to your gym mates?
In conversation, you know very quickly when you're talking to somebody about street violence, you'll know just in conversation how much experience they've got. It's kind of like somebody who they've only seen the trailer to a movie and they start talking about the movie. If they've only seen the trailer and you've seen the full movie, they can't converse with you about what the movie's about. They haven't seen it all. They've only seen the trailer and they can be confused having, what's the movie about then? They don't know. They haven't seen it all. And that's what you find in a lot of combat clubs. They've seen their technical ability used in a club. Let's take cage fighting, MMA. I spoke to a few of those guys who I know have never, ever had a street fight. They say, well, grappling, we've seen it. Gracies, they prove that grappling works all the time. And straight away, they've never had a street fight because you go out tonight, you've got a jacket on that might cost you 100 quid, jeans 50 quid, shirt 30 quid, I don't know. You got, could be a few £100 up to 1,000 plus, whatever. You got some nice clothes on, you're out having a drink. And you end up kicking off with somebody. That grappling that you do in the club, in your tracksuit or your karate gi or judo gi, whatever, you're now lying in broken glass. You're lying in blood, somebody's piss, stones. You've ripped all your clothes. You're grappling and you're exhausted. If you're grappling for 30 seconds, you are absolutely spent. You're exhausted, and everything. All your clothes are ruined. You grazed up your arm. There's blood everywhere, and you just choked somebody out, and they're lying there unconscious. Who knows what's going to happen after that? There's so many emotions involved, and the people who say grappling is king, unless it's a square go one-on-one with rules, where nobody's going to join in. Grappling's going to get you killed, because once you get hold of somebody and you're grappling until it's over. Nobody's letting go. You're grappling until it's over. So if somebody's grappling with somebody else and a friend joins in, then you're in trouble. How are you fighting two of them? You're already tied up. So is grappling great? Brilliant if it's one-on-one and arranged. You're both going to agree to rules. But in grappling, people don't bite your cheek off. They don't bite your nose off or bite through your ear or through your neck. They don't do that. All they do is grapple. So when somebody says, I would do this or I would do that, you have a conversation with a bouncer that's done the job for years and he's been in the trenches. You'll know if he has. You have a conversation with somebody in a martial art club who'd never had a street fight. You just know in their conversation they haven't had a street fight because it's absolutely, absolutely horrendous. The majority of the bouncers that I work with, some were boxers, some rugby players, some didn't do any combat training at all. They just grew up fighting on the street. But every one of them who were worth anything were people who could be violent in a split second. I mean, ruthlessly violent. And it's all about intention. What is your intention? My intention, if I couldn't talk somebody out of it, if I couldn't walk away, if I could shut the door, I'd shut the door. If I could push somebody out the door and shut the door, I'd do that. If there was absolutely no other way, my intention was always the same thing: have them unconscious, and it should be over 2 or 3 seconds. Anything less, anything more than 2 or 3 seconds, and it's just going to go to shit. So, if you want to, anybody who wants to learn to defend themselves, their very, very first thought should be, don't be there, walk away. It's only your ego. I was speaking to, you may have seen the Terry Stone interview the other week. I was talking to Terry about that. And the more you think about it, the more you have a conversation about it, you realize that it's only your ego that gets you into a fight anyway, because I'll ask you a question. How many times in your life as an adult, school's different because kids can be weird. As an adult, how many times have you been physically attacked for no reason at all? Zero reason, no dialogue, no nothing. Just somebody just jumps on you, attacked.
As an adult, no.
Yeah, probably never.
Never.
I've asked that question of pretty much every adult that I speak to at some point, and they all say never. So if you've never, ever been jumped on, never been attacked, why are you even talking about self-defense and defending yourself? It doesn't happen. It very rarely happens. What happens is a conversation happens. Somebody says something, does something, and your ego decides to take offense or to have a conversation back with them about what they said about you or what they've done. And it's only going to go one way. You can tell by the conversation and the mannerisms of the person in front of you that this is going south. This isn't going anywhere nice. You can at that point decide just to remove yourself from the area. But most people don't. It's the same in a road rage. You're sitting in a car, somebody cuts in front of you, puts a finger up at you. You don't know them. You've got no idea what their ability is. You're surrounded by metal. You're in a car. You're safe. But you answer back with, yeah. And then they say, pull over. So what do? You pull over to start having an argument with them. With somebody you don't know. Your ego suddenly, it's easy now when we're talking about it to say you shouldn't do that. In the moment, you've got to take a deep breath and go, I'm letting them get away with it. It doesn't matter. Even if he was totally in the wrong, you just go, hey, sorry, mate, and drive away. Because in 10 minutes, 15 minutes, an hour, it's all been forgotten. But getting angry with somebody is your ego saying, I'm going to show him, What are you going to show him? Show him what? You don't even know who he is. He might be a really good, tough guy that, he's going to destroy you. And you're getting out the car to fight with somebody you don't even know for no reason. So men don't generally just get attacked. Their ego gets attacked. And their ego then gets them into a fight. So having the confidence to, and going back to what you're talking about earlier in a karate club, a martial art club, teaching confidence, the confidence that a kid should be aspiring to gain is that confidence that allows him, her, even if they've got some kind of ability, to not be scared of being laughed at by their friends for running away, walking away. There are hundreds of people, maybe more, thousands, in jail right now who'd wish they bottled it and walked away. They're doing 10 years for a split-second decision that they could quite easily have got away with.
Definitely. In terms of on the doors, what's the worst thing or the most violent thing you witnessed?
I've seen loads. I mentioned quite a few in the book, spoke about quite a few on podcasts. I've seen people hit a baseball bat. So there's loads. For me, I mentioned one where a guy pulled an axe out on me after
Sorry,
I had a fight with him.
Trouble. Please try in a little while.
Alexa's talking to me. Too many to mention. I've seen people glassed, their head kicked around the car park, they drag them outside and jump all over the head. I've seen people. There's so many. I did 15 years. So
after your first night, you didn't want to go back again. You're somebody who didn't like confrontation and not a violent person 99.9% of the time. Why did you go back and why did you do it for so long?
I went back, as I said earlier, I went back because I was a karate black belt winning competitions, and I hadn't separated what I did as a sport from self-defense. And I didn't want people saying, oh, Ian's a black belt, he's got trophies, he's doing this, he's doing that. But he can't have a fight. And it was my lack of confidence in being able to say to somebody, no, you're right, I can't have a fight. I'm just an athlete. If I was able to say, I'm not a fighter, I'm an athlete, I would never have worked the door. But at 19, I felt like I got something to prove to me, just to myself, I guess. So I got back on the door, realised it was just about violence, got good at violence. When I say good at violence, I got good at doing what I had to do for short periods, even though it wasn't me, I didn't like it. But I think I stayed there for 15 years because the money was good. I ended up, I was employing Doorman then. So I was not only getting my own salary, I was also getting money for them, paying them, and obviously keeping my cut. So when you're only working maybe 5 nights a week and just evenings, you're all day to yourself, you're making good money. And a week turns into a month turns into a year, and then 15 years pass. And I was there far, far, far too long, really. But it was, I guess you're socializing, making some decent money, and you kind of fall into that lifestyle. So I went back on the door purely to get over the fact that I'd bottled it before, and I wanted to prove to myself that I could do it. And I wouldn't suggest anybody did that because it's not a good thing to do.
Does that go back to, you mentioned a minute ago about the sort of road rage analogy, things like that, go back to ego. And like you say, for yourself, it's a case of, well, I don't want nobody thinking that I can't do it and I bottled it because I'm a black belt. I'm, supposedly meant to be this person who can fight. And you went back because of your ego and your pride not being dented.
That is what it was. I went back on the door because I was an athlete. I mean, how many? It'd be interesting if they were honest, but I don't know you get an honest answer. Be interesting to ask combat athletes, people who are doing MMA. I mean, people love the cage fighting. I'm a cage fighter. I'm a boxer. I'm involved in this karate club or whatever it is. It'd be interesting to ask how many of you think you can have a fight outside? And I would suggest most people would say, yeah, I just don't pull it. I just don't control myself. They don't. A lot of people, and it's not their fault, and I was the same. You think that a fight outside is just an extension of what you do in a club. It's just outside. But it isn't. It's completely, totally different. There's no rules outside. Your intention has to be different. And I went back on the door purely because I hadn't got the maturity and the confidence to say, no, I'm just an athlete. And I think the sooner the people say, no, I'm just an athlete, I'm just in a combat sport, so I enjoy the sport. I remember seeing, and it wasn't that long ago actually, an interview with Oscar De La Hoya. Tremendous fighter, tremendous professional boxer, awesome, who said he's scared to death of a street fight. He knows what's to get in a street fight. He knows how it works. But somebody of that caliber, somebody that high, respected boxer, openly said, I don't want to get involved in that, because he obviously knows how it all works out there. And so he hasn't gone out and done all that. Do I wish I hadn't? No, not really, because it's kind of helped me be the person I am. I'm not an arrogant person. I'm not a violent person. I spend my time trying to help other people. But I learned that I know how to be very violent, because that's all that's required in violence is be violent. That's it. You don't need a fighting skill to be violent. In fact, a lot of bouncers I know are not. If you ask them to have even a 30-second or 1 minute boxing round, they couldn't do it. They're not necessarily. Are some of them good? Yeah, of course they are. But a lot of them won't stand and get in a ring and have a few minutes of boxing. They couldn't do it. They just couldn't do it. But they can be absolutely horrendously violent outside, which is what it takes.
So you worked 15 years on the doors, you worked your way up the ladder as such. Did you ever, I don't know if notorious is the right word, but did you have a reputation for being violent on the doors?
I hope not. I believe not. In actual fact, I tend to think I was that unknown doorman. I wasn't that person who built an entourage around me of people who were in the criminal world, because a lot of the bouncers, they do also delve into crime. There's a lot of criminality on the door. You know, if you work the door long enough, you're going to meet criminals. You're going to get involved in drug deals. All kinds of criminality is available to you as a bouncer. I like to think, and I believe it's the case, the people that have known me over the years working the door would only really have ever seen me on the door talking to people. The ones that matter, the ones that I say matter, is that even the right terminology? The people who've seen me being violent will know that it's because I had no other choice. So reputation-wise, there are guys I work the door with who've got bigger reputations, because they were violent all the time when they didn't need to be. They've got a reputation for hurting people a lot, and I guess there's lots of times that I could have been violent where I let somebody threaten me, I allowed them to threaten me, because the alternative, if I thought they were going to be actually violent to me, then I'd have been first. but I actually allowed people a lot of leeway when somebody was abusive or threatening. I didn't take that personally. I didn't just get involved in violence because they were rude. And I know a lot of doormen who, and this is kind of why I've learnt that it was their ego that was attacked. And their ego said, fuck that, I'm not letting a guy talk to me like that. And then they go in and they're hitting a drunk who probably doesn't need to be hit. So reputation-wise, a lot of people in Coventry know me, but I'm hopefully for the right reason.
You moved over to America. Was that purely for work?
No, it was initially, I used to take teams to America. My karate club traveled around the country, and we went to Belgium, Holland, Germany, Czechoslovakia, Norway. I took teams all over the place to compete, and I took a team to America, got to know one of the organisers of the competition. He then invited me to another match, which we arranged fundraising and took other teams over to America. So I was going back and forth to the States anyway as a competitor. And my wife then got a opportunity to work in Indianapolis at university in Indianapolis. And so we moved over with her job initially. And then when I was there, then I opened my own gym there then. And I was just teaching group fitness classes. We had a boxing section and group fitness.
And how did that evolve? Because I think from my research, you sort of done a few different bits and pieces, a bit of karate, a bit of PT, and mentioned the gym. And did you sort of start training celebrities as such? And then you went into the stuntmen side of things as well?
Right. You must know who Jeff Thompson is.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff and I ran a karate association, and Jeff and I had trained Aikido together when we were about 12, 13 years of age. So I'd known Jeff as a kid. I bumped into Jeff outside a martial art club. A martial arts shop. I was buying some equipment for the gym, and he'd running a karate club. And I hadn't seen him for years. And we got talking, and I was running a karate association at the time. So I invited Jeff to join my association. So we trained together a lot, ended up working the door together a lot, sparred a lot together. And in actual fact, we used to go ice skating twice a week, me and Jeff. And we'd ice skate around just talking about door work and, for years. And he had written his first book, Watch My Back. And long story short, his book then starts getting notoriety. And he's invited to Vegas to teach on the Chuck Norris course. I was now living in Indianapolis. He contacted me and said, I've got this invite to go to Vegas. It's only a few hours flight for me in Indianapolis. Did I want to go over? So I've gone over for a few days to spend some time with Jeff. And thanks to Jeff, he got me a gig teaching competition fighting to the Chuck Norris competition team. So from that, I met a guy who was teaching a group fitness session on that same Chuck Norris course, and his name was Garrett Warren. Garrett was a stunt coordinator in Hollywood. He invited me out to Agora Hills, California, when I spent 2 weeks with him, and ended up. He pointed over and said, "Do you know who that lady over there is?" And that was Catherine Back from Dukes of Hazzard. She needs some help doing some fight choreography for a movie coming out, so I helped her do that. And that was kind of, people think I was in Hollywood helping all these celebrities, and could that have happened? Had the possibility, because it was, some people think that that a door that you can't move is locked. It isn't. A lot of the time it's just stuck and needs a bit of a push. Sometimes doors are locked and you need contacts who become the key to open doors. But this door didn't really need pushing that much. It was there. But so I was learning what I wanted to learn was this group fitness, which I did from Garrett. He got this massive class. He got it, minimum 100 people. It sounds like exaggerating. You got 100 people in a hall, celebrities of all kinds of names in this group fitness class. He was a former student of Billy Blank's from the Tybo fame. And so I'm now involved with people who could advance me if I wanted to push that door a bit harder, if I want to go down that road. But Garrett was separated from his wife. His wife, and they just recently separated. She only just left the house. I was staying in the house that they were in only weeks before, excuse me. And Garrett was, his then wife, which became his ex-wife, was Joe Pesci, the actor, Joe Pesci's ex-wife. And they were separated and they got a young baby. I'd spent 2 weeks at Garrett's house, and I had opened the door a few nights in the week when we ordered takeaways. Door would go, open the door. Now, we're fitness guys, but we're still eating junk at night. And so I spent some time with Garrett, went back to Indianapolis, was there a month or two, I guess, and on the news, breaking news, Joe Pesci's ex-wife's husband has been gunned down on the doorstep. What had happened was Garrett's wife, which was Joe Pesci's ex-wife, had hired a hitman, and he'd come to the door, knocked the door. When Garrett opened it, which I'd opened on many occasions, he shot him 4 times. He survived. He lost an eye, and it was all over the news. And I'd opened that door on so many occasions. I put in the book about I call it dodging a bullet, because it could quite easily have been when I was there. He was, when I saw the report about it, it was so obvious this guy was scoping out this house while I was there. So it could have been any time. So that's my kind of claim to fame, Hollywood fame. So was I in Hollywood teaching people, working out with people? No, but the potential was there. Who knows what happened if Garrett hadn't been shot?
What's that like to look back in hindsight and think, or even at the time you read the report and thought it could have been you? Obviously, it sounds like it was definitely targeted, and they wasn't there for you as such. But like you say, it could well have easily been yourself. How does that make you feel?
Well, at the time, I didn't think anything about it. I just saw that Garrett was shot. I remember picking the phone up, and I spoke to somebody at the gym. They said, "Yes, it's true. He's been shot." Blah blah blah. And of course, they didn't want to give me much information about it because it's all brand new news. It was many months after that I'd managed to speak to somebody at the gym who was close to Garrett, told me how he was. Obviously, it took a long time. You don't get shot 4 times, lose an eye, and just go to the gym the next day. It's a long recovery for him. But it wasn't until there was a special report that came out. So I didn't know what happened. I just knew he got shot. And it wasn't until maybe even a year after that, until something, I got these NBC special reports, documentaries, and there's quite a few documentaries out now about how it happened. And it wasn't until I watched one of those and they showed that this guy got a picture of Garrett. I had red hair. Garrett's got red hair. We don't look, to somebody who doesn't know you, and would be nervous and is going to shoot somebody when the door opens. We could quite easily be mistaken. Similar height, similar build. Obviously, if you took time, you'd know we weren't the same person. But when I saw the report, it suddenly dawned on me, hold on a minute. They were doing this, they were doing that. Here's the dates that they were doing it. I must have been there while they were doing that. So it's like, wow. So I was doing all this And this guy's looking in the window. This guy's watching the car pull up. This guy's looking to see, when the best time is. So I just, that's why I call it dodging the bullet. Because did I think anybody hears the story, they would say potentially, obviously did.
Definitely. The final topic I've got, Ian, is the book itself, Fighting with Myself. You mentioned it a few times, a few of the stories in there. Firstly, what was your reason for writing this book?
Reason for writing it had been in my back of my mind for years. Now, I'm not by any stretch of the imagination anything close to being a writer. In fact, in one of the chapters, I talk about how my embarrassment at school was that I wasn't very good at spelling. One of the things I hated at school was English. And am I a bad speller? It wasn't that I was a bad speller. It all kind of comes to that confidence thing again. I wasn't very confident at writing. I always thought I'd make a mistake. And if I wasn't sure, I just wouldn't do it. So I'm not a very confident speller. So for me to sit down and write a book, I don't know how to do that. How do you do that? You just don't do it. So, but I got a lot of things that I was interested to talk about, and I thought would make my life story would be an interesting book. And one day I just thought, I've managed to overcome. Nobody overcomes fear, but I managed to overcome how to deal with that emotion, how to confront things I'm not very comfortable with. So how do I now overcome this? Am I saying, no, I can't write a book? Or am I saying, I'm going to find out how to write a book? But I got so many things I wanted to say, but had no idea where to start. What do you start with? What chapter do you start with? Do you start is it a third person writing it, the narrative, as in when you're writing it down, who is saying what? How is it said? Is it just me just rambling on? Where do you even start? I had no idea. Started doing a bit of research, which didn't really help that much. So I just thought, I'll just do what I thought most writers do. They open the laptop, open a Word document, and start writing. I thought, well, I can't edit what I haven't written. So I open the laptop and I start writing something, and of course you want it perfect. You want it right. But that isn't how it works. I then saw a YouTube video, a woman explaining that she'd written a book in 3 days. And I'm going, that's bollocks. But I'll watch it anyway. But she hadn't written a book in 3 days. What she'd done is she'd written a draft in 3 days. And so I thought, okay. And she explained, you can't edit what you haven't written. Just write stuff down, walk away, come back to it, and then correct it. So I thought, right, I'll use that as a starting point. So I sat down again, got a quiet place, got my laptop, started writing. Wasn't working. Nothing was coming out. Nothing. Inspiration doesn't come when you want it to. It comes when it does. So nothing was happening. And I'm talking to somebody on the phone one day. I say talking because I don't know if you do this. Often when I text somebody, I don't text them. I talk and it types.
Right.
So I press the button, I start talking, it types, and I send it. I've gone, if I can talk to a phone and it types, why can't I talk to a phone and it types a book? So I looked, and there's a thing called Google Docs. And all you do is open documents, name them. And I didn't know what the first chapter was, second chapter, third, and where they all fitted in. I didn't know. So I opened the phone, got Google Docs, opened the first document, which I think I called bollocks, like first draft bollocks, whatever it was. And I'll be having a cup of tea, I think of something, and I start writing it, start talking to it, put it down. While I'm walking around, because I've started, I'm thinking of something else. pick it up. There it is, something else. Next day I go to work out, I'm on the treadmill. Put the phone on there while I'm walking on the treadmill. I'm talking to the phone and I'm watching it type. And after about a day of doing that, I went back to it. I'd now got something, 70% of which I didn't want. But I've got something now I can edit. So now I start editing that. And now that I've edited it, I've got something that's actually really interesting, which opens the door to the next bit I want. So over a period of a few weeks of putting it down, picking the phone down, picking it up, putting it down, I've created a structure for me that works. So now I'm lying in bed and I think of something that I wanted to say in that particular chapter. I pick the phone up, talk to it, not even look at it, put it down. In the morning, go back to it and go, well, most of that is rambling, but those 5 words are okay. Once I got used to that, it became pretty easy. And I'm using exactly the same principle now because when I went and spoke to Terry Stone from The Rise of the Foot Soldier, he's read the book and very keen on producing a movie stroke TV series. It takes years. It's not like a 5-minute job, but he's interested in doing something with it. And he's asked me, just go ahead and do your own screenplay. Screenplay is basically take the book and now write it in a manner that a director can understand to direct people on what to do. So rather than reading the book, you take the book and then you write it. You write it in a different way, but the basic information is already there. So using that formula that I used to write a book, and none of it, not one part of the book, was written down on a laptop. It was all spoken and then edited and then printed and then changed over a period of time. So I am now, once I realized I'm a non-author who's now become an author because I figured out how to, I am now going to write a screenplay, even though I'm not a screenplay writer, because I know that I can't edit a screenplay that I haven't started writing. That makes sense.
Absolutely does, yeah. You mentioned at the start of that you've been wanting to write this book for quite a while. In terms of the reason for writing the book, was that for yourself? Was there an intended message of the book for other people?
Well, when I started writing it because I wanted something that I could have to sell. Now, there's a chapter in the book called 2 million copies sold. And I'd read a book that on the front cover said 1.5 million copies sold. And I'm thinking, 1.5 million copies, that's a lot of books to sell. And I read the book and I thought, it's a half decent book, but how did it sell 1.5 million? And I'm thinking, I looked at the date on it and I realized this book was 30 years old. And it's taken 30 years to sell 1.5 million copies. So I'm looking at it thinking, if this is 30 years old, that means for the first 10 years of its existence, there was no internet. There was no Amazon. There was no push a button and buy a book. This is bought from a magazine, sending a check away, or from a bookstore. Or how do you sell 1.5 million copies of a book? And it had. I researched it, and it had sold that many. Obviously, it had various rewrites. But I'm thinking, if you can write a book and sell 1.5 million copies, the first 10 years of which there was no internet and no way of buying it online, then surely I can sell 2 million copies of my book. So as I'm writing the book, then I'm thinking, I'm going to do it. When I get this book published, I know for the first few years it might do nothing. It's doing okay. It's not brilliant, but it's ticking over. It's doing okay. But I thought, I don't need to put a a time on it. I don't need it to sell X amount by a certain time. If this book was sold 1.5 million in 30 years, I can sell 2 million copies in 30 years. I might not be around in 30 years, but it still could. I mean, in 2, 3, 4 years' time, suddenly it might explode. It might go crazy. So while I was writing it solely now with the purpose of, let me get all this. And 80% of what I wrote isn't in the book. I've got a load more kept aside. I wanted to keep it an easy read, an interesting read that people could relate to. So after lots of juggling stuff around and changing a few things, I got to a stage where I thought that book is interesting enough now where it's an easy read and it's not a big, thick thing just for the sake of it. So the purpose of writing it initially was to get out stuff I want to get out. But then it was, I'm on a mission now. I'm going to write this book and it's going to do two things. It might take 10, 15, 20, 30, I don't know. But the mission is, in that one chapter, how do I now, my next task, how do I sell 2 million copies of these things? How do I do that? The first thing I do is start getting notoriety. I'm doing podcasts, I'm doing all kinds of stuff, talking to people. And bit by bit by bit, those doors that I thought were closed were locked. Are not locked. They're just stiff. They need a push. And when I'm pushing through those doors, I'm finding other doors that are locked. But the thing is, I'm meeting people who are in the key to those doors. And there's no time limit on it. There's no time scale on it. It just happens when it happens. I'm getting contacted pretty much, not every day, but a few times a week. People who are talking about conventions for the video game stuff. Other people want to do podcasts. Do you want to come and do this? So doors are opening simply because I wrote this book. And so the book was written to get some stuff out. It was written with a view to see how many, as a mission for me, how many copies of this can I sell. But now what I'm finding out is this book, people are reading it and it's opening doors. People are interested. They read a bit and they go, now that's interesting. I want to contact this guy because that chapter is really interesting to me. And on any given day, because of the book, on any given day, there could be a phone call, there could be an email, there'll be a text message. Hey, Ian, do you want to do so? I mean, you contacted me, probably, is it from Terry's podcast or?
Yes, with you.
Yeah. So people are seeing things and thinking, I'd like to talk to that guy. That was a very interesting podcast. I want to talk to him and see if we can, you're growing your channel and somebody will see this or say, oh, that you only need one person, one person who is massively influential, who says, I saw you on so-and-so. I was at Terry's event, Terry Stone's event in Leicester. What day is it now? 2 days ago. And he was on stage and he was being asked questions about his progression, how he started, how it all worked out for him. And something very similar happened to him in terms of he was doing really, really well selling tickets to rave dues, massive rave promoter. But a friend of his called him one day and says, do you want to be, I need somebody for a movie, do you want to be in it? And he said, fuck it, yeah, why not? Give it a go. And he's gone and done that. And then from that, he's got another gig. Then he got an agent who got him another gig. And his movie career took off after one phone call from somebody he knew. When I got a message last year, because of the retro gaming culture, I got a message saying, can you come over to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, for the gaming convention? I said, well, absolutely, of course I can, yeah. So I'm actually an American citizen now too. So I said, yeah, of course I can. So I spent 4 days in Milwaukee, spent a few days with all the original cast members of Mortal Kombat. And I then get approached by the guy who's an agent for the Mortal Kombat people. And he gets me on his books, and now he's looking at, he's the person looking for other conventions for me. So a lot of it is, they're not really chance meetings. You've got to, if you plant a seed and walk away from it, nothing happens. You got to plant a seed, you got to water it, you got to show it sunshine, you got to nurture it. And those seeds, if you plant them, the potential, on any given day, something can happen. And the book, if I hadn't written that book, we wouldn't be talking right now.
Your last question in terms of the book, I've interviewed a few people who've written autobiographies, and they've all said that writing a book and the process of going through their stories and their life stories is almost like a process of therapy. Did you gain benefits from writing the book in terms of yourself? And I'm not going to say make peace with yourself with some things you've done previously, but in terms of that side of things, would you say it's helped you?
Very cathartic. You when you're writing it, you end up, while you're writing it, you end up omitting things. I'm not going to put that in there. I'm not going to say that. But what you're doing then is you're lying to the reader, because you're saying something that you think the reader wants to hear and not what the truth is. And then, so what you're doing is you open up a lot about what you really feel, how you really think about things, and writing it down and then reading it back is very cathartic. It does. Yeah. It's, every single person, everybody on the planet has got a very, very good book in them. They don't think they have, but they have. An example would be, I could say to you, you don't think you've got a book in you. Maybe you do. You don't think you've got a book in you. Why don't you tell me the very first experience of going to school? And you go, oh, it's nonsense. It's boring. Well, just tell me. So you start talking about the school you went to, and I say, so how close was it to your house? Well, it's so and so. Okay, but who are your neighbours? Neighbours so and so. Then you go, oh, in actual fact, now we start talking about my school and my street and my neighbours. Now I remember so and so. And each time you talk about something, it triggers another memory and another one. And I've got a funny story about that. And you start writing it down, and it's all bollocks. All you've done is written bollocks. But 5% of it is interesting. So you keep it in. And that makes you think about how you felt about the first girlfriend or parents or some kind of I don't know, something in your education, what you did or didn't do, or so you add that. And suddenly you realize you've got a really interesting story that you would never, ever, ever have, if you hadn't dug deep, you would never have found out about it. And then after a week or two, you've got a chapter, you don't know where to put it, but you've got a chapter that all started with, what's your first experience of going to school? And now you've got this chapter that's got fuck all to do with school, but it's ended up as this. And you go, okay, I want to do that again. I want to do another chapter. And before you know it, you've dig deep, and you started bringing out things that you'd had even forgot about or purposely put behind you. It might have been an experience with a girlfriend or a boyfriend or I don't know, so writing it opens a lot of doors that you close yourself. And there are some doors you did lock. You never want to see again. Never want to see behind again. But then when you open them, you realize, well, hold on a minute. That's my life. That's real. So why am I hiding it? So yeah, very cathartic. And I would say to everybody, write a book and keep it simple. Keep it secret if you don't want to publish it. But write it and you'll be surprised how much it really helps you.
Fantastic, Ian. That is all I had to ask you, but thank you very much for your time. It's been a real pleasure speaking to you.
Brilliant, mate. All the best. Thank you.
Thank you.